All right, I'd like to call to order the Lincoln City Budget Committee training. Today is Monday, March 2nd. The time is now 6 p.m. And sorry, we'll have a roll call here as soon as our recorder is here. Sorry, Kathy, I apologize. Oh, maybe not.
Testing.
I can hear you. I can hear you.
Do we have a
You'll need to make sure you speak
Hello.
right into the mics.
hello right into the mics? They're low.
They're way low.
That's all right.
We don't need to hear ourselves.
So just call to order, and I was asking for a roll call, please.
Let's just go around the room. My sheets don't have it.
All right, Susan, would you mind starting, please?
Susan Waukee, Budget Committee member.
Dick Anderson.
Rick Mark.
Deanna Hinton.
Riley Hoagland.
Mitch Parsons.
Estelle Harlan.
Judy Casper.
Diane Coos.
Elaine Starmer.
Nancy Oxenholt. Kathy Steer, City Recorder.
And Mr. Chandler.
Ron Chandler.
All right, so I will give the floor to you.
Thank you. So it's a pleasure to be with the Budget Committee again as we are full-blown into the budget season. This is our opportunity to provide a little bit of training. We have, all of you are not new to the committee. You've all had experience with that. So we did not feel it was necessary to go through the process of how the budget is adopted, since you know that. We did feel that it would be a good opportunity to talk about where we are, particularly with capital projects. Those have the biggest impact on the next year's budget, and it's a good opportunity for us to tell you where we're coming in under budget, where we're going over on the budget, projects that are going to be completed, some that may be delayed, some that are two-year projects, and so forth. It's also, and since those affect the budget so significantly, it's also a good opportunity for us to review the financial forecasts. Those really do highlight where some of the difficulties we will be facing, where some of our strengths are, and what we can expect. Now, I might point out that on the financial forecasts, we're using the forecasts that are part of this year's adopted budget. We've already prepared some new financial forecasts, but we have not passed those out because they contain information on next year's budget. And as you know, we don't discuss next year's budget until actually the budget is presented to you formally. Do you remember when it comes? May.
This is like the draft for you.
I'll tell you in just a second. Let me pull out
Ms. Steer, can we show for the record Mr. Noriakis is here, please? Thank you. Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. The budget comes to you on April 10th, Friday, April 10th.
End of the day.
And
Yeah.
your first budget meeting.
5:58 p.m.
Your first budget meeting will be on April 20th. Second budget meeting is on May 4th, and your third budget meeting is on May 18th. It then will go to the City Council on June 8th. Okay, I brought Debbie here as always to be my backup, to tell me when I made an error in what I'm telling you, and to really dive into the details. In many ways, this will be a Lila Bradley show because most of the projects fall under the Public Works, but we will, however, begin with the Police Department. Chief, come on up. There were 5 projects that were associated with the Police Department and the police services, including the dispatch services. The first one that I want to mention are the 3 that are associated with the construction of the building itself. The first one is the police building, which is the $10,432,957 expense to the city. That is well underway. If you have not had the opportunity to go by the police department, please take that opportunity. It is expected to be operational by the end of June. Okay, and on budget. One of the main projects that's associated with that that ties to it is the radio upgrades, or our radio communication project. We had budgeted $750,000 in last year's budget, which was associated with putting up one of 5 radio towers throughout the city. 5 or 6?
6.
6. That would be the first of 6 radio towers. The original expense of that was $250,000. We saw that grow to $750,000 for just for the first one. And then from there, it grew over to $1 million. So we took a step back and reevaluated how we were dealing with the radio programs. Was there a better way, a cheaper way, and as an effective way of being able to deal with this radio upgrade and improved radio systems? We found that there was. Last week, we presented the first of 2 expense items to the City Council to approve the construction of a tower, a smaller tower, same height, smaller footprint tower at the police building, plus the upgrades to the other existing towers and facilities that we have. We're expecting the total cost of that to be right around $400,000. Saving the city about $350,000. We floated the idea to the City Council. We'll present it to them in their March 9th meeting, that to use the remaining money and to add a little bit more to that from the city's contingency funds to tear down the old building and pave and do the parking lot. As one of the conditions of approval for that building, we have 3 years. It's actually a condition the city has set upon the police department, which is to tear down the old building and put the parking lot in within 3 years. Because of the savings and using some of the contingency we have this year, being able to do that, we will not have to burden future budgets with that expense. So we'll be bringing that to the City Council in their March 9th meeting as an amendment to this year's budget. The other expense that's associated with this building is $150,000 for the upgrade of the city's radio consoles that are used by the dispatch service. That is budgeted for $150,000. The purchase and installation of that will correspond with the opening of the new building. The other 2 purchases that we have with associated with the police capital are body cameras. Those have been purchased and they are being used. If you have the pleasant opportunity of running into one of our police officers, you'll notice it's right center on their chest, and they're watching you, they're recording you, and we'll be reviewing that video.
Might I also say they're putting bloopers out for their agents on social media, where they recently captured, what was it again? A rat?
Not familiar with which one you're talking about. Apparently, I haven't seen it yet.
There was a rat in somebody's house, and so they're like, we've apprehended the subject.
There you go. Yeah, so-
This may be the most viral, we may get a lot of viral videos out of this one.
Yeah, so thanks for putting that out as well, because it's nice to see funny things, so it is good.
well,
So far from my discussions with the police officers, they're very pleased with having that extra part of their police service, which actually is, interestingly enough, a little bit switched from just a few years ago. I had many discussions with our previous police chief about whether or not, what is the benefit of having body cameras. Chief Palmer has embraced those, and it appears our officers have as well, and have found the benefits of those.
Mr. Chandler,
Yes, sir.
have you gotten any feedback from the public regarding cameras?
Chief, I'll let you answer that question.
Not specifically. What feedback I will give you is that so far, we've had very small number of complaints against a couple of our officers where they've accused our officers of improper conduct. We can go immediately to the video on that, and so far, every single one of them has been disproved as unfounded complaints. So, and my experience over the years with onboard video cameras in our patrol cars is the same pattern. About 99.9% of the time when we get an accusation against an officer and we can have actual recording of what happened there, it ends up in the officer's favor, showing that we are conducting ourselves professionally out there. And then on occasion, we will record our officers doing something that they need to be corrected on, and we take care of that as well.
Thank you.
The final item we have is the purchase of 3 vehicles for a little more than $155,000. Those vehicles have been ordered. They're in the process of being outfitted and will be put on the road before the end of June. One of those is a hybrid vehicle. So,
This was last year's,
Last year.
right.
This is from last year's
Right.
budget, correct?
So
reminder, when we talk about the budget, it's fiscal year, July 1st to June 30th. So June 30th, 2020 is what we're talking about. So the budget we're really working on is the 2021 budget, and that's the one that will come forward to you in next month. Okay. Any questions pertaining to the police capital?
I was just curious, the only, it just struck me that this issue with the radio tower getting more and more expensive, it's the only problem like that that I've recall hearing about. So are we on budget with the almost completed building? And
Yeah, we are on budget. We are behind schedule. We had actually originally anticipated moving into that building in December and January. The steel and the CLT didn't come together quite as everybody expected and kind of delayed things.
Can you explain CLT?
Pardon?
CLT is?
The cross-laminate timber, the material that makes up all our primary walls, roof, floors over there, kind of put us a little bit, well, quite a bit behind. But it's come together now. It's a major beehive over there right now. They've got workers on the roof and throughout the building right now. It's really ramping up quickly now.
I might point out as well that if you're willing to stand out in the rain and get wet a little bit, we have actually turns out to be a very wonderful art feature. As you know, on both the north and south side of the building, it flows to one point. That becomes a very beautiful waterfall. As it comes off the building, it's not meant to go down through a gutter. It's meant to actually flow freely. And at the base of it is a trough that then takes it out away from the building and flows it down another one. And so if you're willing to stand out in the rain a little bit, it creates really quite a nice feature to see. So
That would be great. I'll ask them.
Yeah, we are happy that it's sealed up and headed outside instead of inside now. So
Ron, if I can, to Rick's question on the over budget, we're on a fixed price anyway, are we
We are.
not? So there won't be any over budget.
that's correct. The changes there are of course changes that you always see, but that's built within the contingency of the budget itself. So so far we are on task. Okay, Chief, we'll let you go sit down, and Lila, it becomes your show for quite a bit.
If I may, as she walks up, when we go down these sidewalks improvements, I know some of them have the buildings associated, so we can get an idea of that, but could you also say the east or west side for some of these, just so that not everyone's familiar?
Okay. All right, we wanted to talk first about the overlay projects. We had 2 overlay projects set forth this year. First of all, as you recall, our budget process itself, or one of our budget policies that we have established is to try to overlay all of our roads over a 25-year period, which will require somewhere between $400,000 to $500,000 investment in overlays each year. We had 2 projects that we had identified for this year. The first one I want to mention is Northeast Surf Avenue at Devil's Point. That was $200,000. That project has been completed. The second is Southwest 29th from Highway 101 to Beach Avenue. Which side of I'm sorry,
West
that's
side.
the whole road that's being paved. That project has been delayed for a couple of reasons. One of the things we're finding with the sidewalk projects that you'll see as we get a little bit down further into this list is that the prices are coming in significantly higher than what our estimate was and what our budget was. For almost all of them, it's a combination of two things. One is some ODOT requirements that are increasing the price. Remember, many of our projects are on Highway 101, which means they fall under the jurisdiction of ODOT. And then the second is that the prices are just simply coming in higher than we had anticipated. Because of those projects coming in, this was one of the projects that we have delayed until next year or a future year in order to cover the cost of some of the expenses we're seeing in other projects. Okay. Any questions on the overlay projects?
We're looking at other funding grants or anything, it's not,
We always are.
yeah.
Yes.
I just
We actually have a company that's working with us on some of those.
Nice.
Ron, approximately how much higher are the actuals?
You'll see that as we go through the list of these projects. Okay. The first of the sidewalk projects is Northeast 36th Drive and West Devils Lake. This goes from Northeast 36 to Highway 101. Which side of the?
Well, actually, that was an overlay project down 36th and onto West Devils Lake Road. And since that project was listed, we've put it on hold. We're looking at going to 2021 budget with that because Northwest Natural Gas purchased the large piece of property on 36th,
Yeah.
and they'll be putting in sidewalk for their portion and doing some paving. And then after they're finished, we'll finish our part of it, because we do have some paving on West Devils Lake Road too, up to the highway. And then we also have the highway project with the Niatsu path that'll tie into that intersection.
So this, to be clear, this one was an overlay project, not a.
This was an overlay project, not a
Sorry
sidewalk.
about that. I put it in the wrong category.
Sorry about that, Ron.
Okay. The next project that we have is storm improvements on Northwest 22nd. This was partly done in 2017-18, 2018-19, and now in 2020. We had $93,430, and these projects are complete. Okay. The next project is the High School Drive from 48th to Highway 101, which includes sidewalk improvements. You want to describe that a little bit more?
That one will improve the intersection and turning radius at the high school drive and 101. And so there'll be an actual turnout. And you know how bad that intersection is, just trying to make those corners. It's pretty bad. But we'll have sidewalk by George Moreland on that south side. And it'll go down to Spyglass. And then you'll be able to cross over to the other sidewalks going to the schools. And that project, we don't have our ODOT permit for that one, and we are looking at starting construction in 2021 in September. So we will be moving that one.
That's the south side of the road there.
That's correct, south side.
So the effect that will have on next year's budget is this will be a carry-forward project. There will be a savings, a budgetary savings, because we didn't spend the money, and then our intent would be to reallocate those funds for next year.
With areas that have sidewalks on one side or the other, and then we're looking to put on both sides, are those to be considered when other areas don't have any sidewalk? So that,
Oh, definitely.
or is there like a specific need or a study was done to say, look, the south side of High School Drive needs that?
This is a safe route to school
Just-
section, so it's really the school and the intersection
Okay.
that's driving that. And then we'll also have some, as we go along moving these projects, we'll have updated budget numbers, mainly because we are further into design. We know what storm we need to do, what property we need to get. And the storm is a really big one. And then also the criteria for sidewalks and ADA now it's like microplaning. I mean, it has to be
Very
totally
specific.
exact. And so that just adds project cost.
Lila, could you, on that, on this one particular, it's budgeted for 260,000, but the project is much larger than that, isn't it? Because I guess to help us understand that it's, when you say it's a, to schools, safe
route to school.
safe routes to schools, ODOT's putting in funding on this?
No,
No?
not on this one.
So then why is that a driver on this? Why is safe route to schools, why are we even worrying about that? Back
It's
there.
just an access to the school. I really was
Oh.
just talking about it being an access to school, not necessarily the funding from Safe Routes to School.
Okay. Did we miss an opportunity there to tap into ODOT?
No, we addressed that, and it wasn't,
Okay.
we didn't get the funding for that.
Okay.
But we're always still looking at other sources, and so when we get into the budget next year, for this coming year, we can discuss those items too. And another thing on all of these are all in-house designs, so our staff, our engineering staff are designing these.
How specific, I guess we'll find out. It's fine.
The South Third flashing beacon and plaza is a 2-year project. This year's was the design part of it, permitting part of it, and that was $10,000. Next year, we had, next year, as we looked at the second year of this, it would be estimated at $310,000.
Chairman? Sure.
I wasn't sure what a plaza was. Is that just that island in the middle of the, what is
Yes.
the plaza?
Well, it will be the flashing beacons and an improved crosswalk on the south side instead of where it is right now on the north side. And whenever you put in a flashing beacon or a crossing, you have to improve the sidewalk access, or they don't allow you to put it in. So we have to make pretty major improvements, and then we were hoping to do a plaza on that street that's not used very much, and that would be a connection to D River and another lookout area.
Oh.
So I'll have to bring that to the council, let you take a look at the
Say
full
that
design
again.
of
You
it. It's a connection.
Plaza on
On
Southeast
the-
Third?
Yes. Next to the storage units and
On
the back of Subway.
The west side, on the
On
ocean
the west,
side.
on the west side.
Oh, I was
West
gonna say,
side.
what are you talking
Yeah,
about?
on the west side, and then it would connect with the parking lot
Okay.
on the east side. That one needs to be a picture.
Yeah,
The
for
whole-
sure.
The whole thing. And then we have Southeast Third Street and the flashing beacon, and then this was, or excuse me, Burger King ramps improvements. And it says 150, but our actual budget, I had it budgeted in a couple different places, was 250, and ended up being 403,000. And we had to do some signal improvements there. That's right out here in front of City Hall. And so we are putting in another crossing on the north side, so it'll be a full square crossing.
Lila, how much of the increase in the cost, the extra 153,000, came through
That came from
ODOT
South.
versus just the price?
Well, the ODOT project's separate. This is just our portion of it, because they're doing all these other ADA improvements on the corners. And so theirs was around 500,000, and ours for doing entrance to City Hall, because we're doing a ADA access into the front of City Hall, and then just improving that whole area, and tearing up some of our parking lot and repaving that. And that's like a first phase. So we're onto city property, and then out into the intersection, and we'll be on also the east side. So that whole intersection will be improved. And that was a portion that we had planned on doing. And then ODOT, and then we partnered with ODOT an agreement, and recently council had approved the increased price on the ODOT agreement. So they're paying for their part, but we're paying for the entrance at Burger King and into City Hall.
So the full value of the increase was a result of just simply the market, the bids?
It was some requirements that we had to meet for ODOT as well.
Some of it was from ODOT, some
For
of
the
it was
signal.
from just the increased price. The next one we have is the Northeast 14th from Highway 101 to Orr, sidewalk on the north side of the street. The budget amount is $460,000. The bids came in last week, and they came in over, do you remember the price?
Yes, it was 500, by the time you do the contingency, it was 550,000 approximately. And that was a project that went from Mass to Port instead of down to Highway 101. We're still working with ODOT on the permitting for the Highway 101 section. So I'm going to roll that one over, add more to it. If council's, acceptable of that in the budget committee, we will add money to that project, go from the highway all the way to Port, and that's Spring Lake on the north side of Northeast 14th.
That's all the way up and then down.
Mhm. Yes.
Where's Orr, right, forgive me, Orr is,
It's the one with the little flashing,
oh, okay, so
at
right
the
at the
top of the
top.
hill where you turn to go to
You
the
could check with Counselor Coos. on
radio
that.
Yeah. Is this a
So
two-year
we would be
project?
going
as well?
down past that to Port,
Sure. Is this a two-year project as well?
yes.
And this is the first year?
Well, this is the first, yes, if we get through the ODOT permitting.
Will be the first.
And so the long and short of it is that this project will not be going forward in this fiscal year because of the cost overrun. The next project we have is Highway 101, sidewalks from Taco Bell to Holmes Road. That's on the east side of the road. We had budgeted $800,000. The cost estimate is now coming at $1.4 million. So this project has been put on hold.
And there is some good news. There's sidewalk all along the west side. And at 36, there's going to be a new development and to the north, and that will fill in the sidewalk gap there. And Pacific Power has their transfer station, and that would fill that one in, so you'd have a full sidewalk from 40th to all the way through. Yeah. And part of the reason that has gone over is when we do take on these projects on 101, we're improving ODOT's entire drainage system because it's almost non-existent. And it goes into ditches, and then we have to add these large filteras and filtering systems and then treat all that water off the highway.
Mr. Chair, so that's a lot of difference, 800,000 to 1.4. Is it still the same answer of why, or is there?
It's the same answer. The wall portion of it at Sea Echo is, our estimate's $329,000 just for that wall. That doesn't include the
So
sidewalk.
again, some
Holy
of it's a
cow.
combination of requirements that we receive from ODOT, and others are, the other part of it is just simply the bids are coming in higher.
We had
So-
geotech work done, so the more engineering work we do, and, you discover
Worth it?
cost,
More things, so.
but we still didn't think it would be over that far, because
So-
we actually added to the budget of $800,000 last year.
So is there any hope for any other funding from ODOT for this? Or they
We'll
just?
have to wait and see. I highly doubt it. Every time we meet
Yeah.
with them, we ask. And
One of the
is
challenges
sad.
that we do have in working with any other jurisdiction or organization that has jurisdictional authority, and we're improving their assets, and that's what Highway 101 is, it's their asset, is that they get to set the terms of how it's going to be built. And so often we will come in and we'll find that we think we've covered everything, only to find there are other things that ODOT will add into it, such as the storm drain part that we didn't anticipate. It is one of the dangers of improving somebody else's assets.
we did ask them the question, how many other cities are actually doing sidewalk on 101 without an ODOT grant? Because most of the sidewalks that we've done, we've received some grant or STIP money, like Mel Scott, the 33rd Street over ramp, and quite a few projects, but they're they're not in the STIP anymore. So it's really difficult. We've tried to get, just sidewalk gap money to finish everything through the town. And so
But we are the only
We've been
city
asking.
that is doing it without contributions from ODOT.
no one else is
how do you
doing
explain-
sidewalks besides us.
This is just making me crazy.
Yeah, I know, I'm so sorry.
Mr. Norakis?
How do you explain that, Mr. Chandler?
Explain,
That we are the only city
because we're willing to do it,
because we're willing to do it?
because we're willing to pay for it. The next item we have is Highway 101. This is also a sidewalk project from South 19th to South 23rd. This is also on the east side of the road. The budget was $480,000. The bid came in at $551,000. Again, it's a little bit of combination of both. We are moving forward with that project, and it's under construction now.
It should be complete within a month or two.
And then the last of the sidewalk projects is Highway 101 from Mojo's Coffee to Motel 6. That is on the east side?
West.
No, west side.
Side.
West side, thank you. That budget was for $110,000. There is some private development that is going to be going on in that part, and so for the time being, we have this project on hold to see if we can tie in with the private development and maybe lower our costs a little bit on that.
And going back to the Taco Bell to Holmes Road, that would also, the two properties on either side of Northeast 36th, one of them's undeveloped and one's kind of underdeveloped. And so when those developers come in, or when they decide to develop those properties, they'd be required to put the sidewalk in. And that is usually the norm on 101.
So any questions specifically on the projects? Because we're going to turn at this point to talk a little bit about the financial forecast.
Mr. Mark?
I'm a little concerned about the Motel 6 sidewalk, only because I know we have a citizen who can't see, is blind, and walks his dog there. I know that, and that particular stretch was a real concern, so I'm hoping we can, the others, I don't, if we need to be delayed, they need to be delayed, but I hope we can accommodate that one.
The one thing we are doing, many times developers come in and they want their driveway in a different place, or, they don't want quite the design that we have, but as future development, we'll have these designed and permitted. And so when developers do get ready to do their project, that part of it's designed and done.
Mr. Hopeland?
Yes, sir.
I'd just like to speak a moment for Mr. Norakis' question, why are we doing that, or with ODOT? And just to remind you, a couple of budget seasons ago, council decided sidewalks was an issue and a high priority, and we wanted to close the gap. And at that time, we knew it was ODOT asset, so we knew what we were getting into, and we hoped ODOT could assist us and would be willing to assist us. But I think it shouldn't be a surprise. And I would share the disappointment that we haven't been able to get ODOT to jump in a little harder with us. But our concern was, especially from Holmes Road north, so many people walking out of Holmes Road and getting to Safeway or the shopping centers and needing sidewalk.
It's a much better answer than I gave. Thank you.
Mr. Norakis, yes, sir.
Lila, could you give us an update on the road going east from Shuckers off of Highway 101, where the hill is undercutting the road once again?
That one,
What's the name of that road, please?
Southeast 48th Street.
48th, okay.
48th Place. And I don't have any new updates on that. We've moved the wall off of our water line.
You have.
Section. And so we just keep monitoring it. We don't really have a fix in place, but we can do some more geotech on if it's still moving or not. But it looks like it's stopped at this point.
The road seems to be subsiding. Is that true?
It did. I'm not sure that it's still moving, so I'll have to take another look at that. but we've marked it and done some maintenance and some culvert work there.
And the water line is no longer in danger. Thank you.
Since we're on it,
Unless there's an earthquake.
is it complete then? Because there's a lot of those bricks that are just, those big boulders just on the side, not even with the rest. Are they gonna, is that their home now?
Are you talking about the large block?
There's like 10, 12 blocks
They're supposed
west
to,
of that.
they're supposed to have moved those.
Oh, okay, that's why I was like, is it
I'll follow-
complete?
I'll
Because
follow
there's a
up.
bunch of bricks
I'll
still
follow
just
up on
hanging
that.
out, so,
Thank you.
anyway, but yeah. Yes, Ms.
So I know last year we budgeted like 2 or 3 million for sidewalks, because we had the money then, in fear of all the prices going up. And I know it takes, like, you went through a whole timeline, like 10 months to get approval and everything. So are we on board to get these projects going? And
You know, that's going to be a budgetary look at which ones and weigh, you know, which ones you really want done. And we can get a lot more mileage on our side streets with walkways like the Northeast 14th to Spring Lake and trying to finish that Head to Bay Trail all the way around.
then are we using local contractors, or are they coming from out?
We actually bid the projects out.
Okay.
And so some are, you know, we get local bids and bids outside.
Thank you.
Anybody else? All right.
So if you'll turn to attachment 1, page 2. This is the financial plan or financial forecast that was part of the budget that specifically pertains to street capital, the street capital fund. As you look at that, that not only shows the proposed revenues and expenditures as for this year's budget, it also included the projects. There's so the bottom line of it is that if you go down to ending fund balance, it's $362,317. We've had a few changes, particularly projects that are not being done because of the cost overruns. And then we also have received a grant for $647,000. And so the projected or the estimated ending fund balance at this point for June 30th, 2020 is $2,192,000. So the significance of that is that that will become your beginning fund balance or your beginning revenue source for next year. Where we were estimating to start at $362,000, we'll now be starting at about $2.2 million. From that, as we go into the budget, we'll be looking at these projects that we haven't been able to move forward on this year, as well as carryover projects and any new projects and streets that we may want to discuss, and how to divvy up those funds. Okay. So, in one sense, the benefit that comes out of it is you've got a bigger amount to start with. In a bad sense, that doesn't necessarily mean the costs are going to go down. So.
But you largely have a bigger amount to start with because of the projects that aren't getting completed.
Right, yeah, it's because of the
not
grant
those.
and because of the projects didn't get completed, exactly. Okay. Any questions on the street capital? Okay. Let's turn to water. Again, we're seeing some costs that are going higher than we expected, and that's causing us to change our plans a little bit. The first is that we had budgeted $50,000 to build a building that would be used for storing equipment, vehicles, things like that. The bid came in at $100,000. I told, when Lila and I met, we said we ought to just go buy some tough sheds and put them up. And so we put that on hold. Try to find an alternative for that building. The Southeast Ore pump station, was budgeted $570,000. I'm going to let Lila talk about this one because this one needs a little bit more in-depth discussion.
So this was a really complicated project. Southeast Door Pump Station, it's off of 15th Street. So if you turn, took a right at 14th Street, Southeast 14th, went up the road a little ways, there's a street that's not improved, and that's where this water booster station is. And it's for the D Lake Heights area, and it's a fire booster station, and it has gone past its useful life. And when we started looking at it, we were going to try to move it to the Southeast 19th Street Reservoir site, and then it would be able to actually function in that entire area. It's because people that are so close to the reservoir and that elevation, they actually have to have pumps for their water in both of the apartment complexes. And so moving this pump station would allow us to, get them off of pumps and just may have a better pressure zone with that pump station, and then still take care of D Lake Heights. So when we got into looking at that, so it's like a reverse of using those pipes. We're going to use the same pipes and reverse the water, to this other end. And so once we got into looking at what that would do, we decided that we needed to do a model of our water system. And when you do a model of your water system, you do the entire system. And over the last 25 years, we've put in so many millions of dollars of new water pipe, larger water pipe. And so what this will do is model our entire system. It'll help us with looking at our water master plan and what we really need to do for future pipe installation. And so our company that we had hired to look at that pump station, HBH, gave us a quote of $61,000 to do that full model of the whole city, which is really a great deal. At least we get some great deals. And they had one of their highest water modelers. Usually these go out to technicians, and it can take 3 or 4 months to do at that same price, but they have a really great senior modeler, and so she's doing this project. And once we get that back, then we can make some real decisions on where that pump station should go and what we want to do with the rest of our system and our master plan update. And speaking of master plan updates and master plans, those all usually have the council on board, so these projects aren't just thought up by us. I mean, we know that what things need to happen out there, and talking to our staff and age of pipes and things like that, but all of these are in a group setting with citizens and the council before the master plans are completed. So there's a lot of public input that goes into the master plans. And we've completed the water master plan, pretty much the sewer master plan, and so we're looking at updating those.
It actually turned to our advantage that this project was delayed because we had an emergency water main replacement that we had to make on West Beach, where the water main needed to be replaced. That cost $315,830. And when we presented that to the city council, the funding came from the postponement of this of the Southeast Door pump station replacement.
And that project is complete, the Southwest Beach.
So that's was a non-budgeted item that we had to deal with. The next item we have is the West Devils Lake water line replacement from Northeast 21st to Northeast 28th Street. We budgeted $750,000. That is under construction, mostly completed. The paving is expected this month. Lila, do you remember what the price came in on that?
It was close to that price.
It was not over.
No, I don't believe that one was over. It was also last Wednesday night we tied in the line to the hospital, and that happened in the middle of the night, and it took them probably about 4 or 5 hours. It was quite a big project. And
That went smoothly?
yes, it did. So it's online. It's we took that water line off the bridge, and so it's bored underneath the bridge on West Devils Lake Road near the boardwalk, and that bridge is funded by ODOT, and that will be coming up for a replacement. And so we have consultants working on that right now and designers. So we did get something from ODOT.
Any questions on those projects specifically before we turn to the capital financial plan?
Is the pole building storage, how is it that we came to need an extra storage building?
Well, last year before the budget was prepared, I met with our treatment operators out there and said, what do you think we need that you're not going to tell Lila about? And their response was, we really need a building to store our items. And then they said, we've told Lila and she's just stingy.
She's like, you want a raise or do you want a storage building?
So I talked with Lila and we said if we could have the budget, that would be a good thing to have. It just came in so much more than what we anticipated that we got to take a step back and find it. It's still something that would be good for us to get some equipment out of the rain.
They don't have any outside storage at all. They have the lab and their office, and so there's equipment outside.
Well,
Is there a place to store it in the garage where?
There is no garage.
If they brought it down to Public Works garage?
They wouldn't be able to use it then. It would cost money to haul it back and forth to the plant, but.
Okay, if you'll turn to attachment 1, page 4. I'm not going to go through all of the capital financial plans for water. If you recall, the water budget is set up in multiple funds, particularly the capital funds. Mostly what I wanted to just point out is on this page. If you look at the proposed 1920, we were projecting an ending fund balance of $986,000. Because some of this project wasn't done that we mentioned, we're actually expecting that to be a little bit higher, to come in at about $1,335,000. So anyways, we're coming out a little bit ahead of where we were, and that's mostly because of the projects that we weren't able to go forward with. The rest of the forecast remain relatively the same. Sewer? Lila says it always comes down to the sewer. We're going to spend a little bit of time talking about the sewer projects and the effect that this will have on our projected ending fund balance. This one deserves the first one, which is the dredge and pump dewatering of solids. Just a reminder from our discussion last year, the city in the past, our practice had been, I got to come back to some sewage treatment plant. This is Sewage 101 from a guy that's not an expert.
Who loves sewage?
I do. I get into it.
Almost as much as he loves numbers.
He's like, you see this? This is Class
I
B.
got the bottles to prove it. So when the sewer comes into the plant, it's separated into liquids and solids. The liquids get processed and are ultimately, after it's clean, turned out into Schooner Creek. The solids would go into drying beds. And for years, we would haul those solids out to farms where they would act as fertilizer. Throughout the state, those opportunities have dried up, eliminated. And so 2-3 years ago, we switched to a different processing in which we purchased a centrifuge that would dry the solids out to even drier than a liquid form that was sprayed. And those are now hauled to the dump. It has left us with 2 lagoons full of drying sludge, and it's pretty thick. And we had talked about how to get rid of that, and the idea was to reprocess it over a few years back through the plant, and then take it out, to the dump with the rest of it. We budgeted this year $160,000 to buy a dredge and a pump that would start that process. However, we have put this on hold because of, it's called the MPDES permit. That's the permit that is issued to us through the Department of Environmental Quality that allows us to discharge our water into Schooner Creek. There are some rule changes on it that is very significant. We're currently in the process of working with DEQ and even challenging DEQ on their conclusions, but it has the potential of being very, very expensive to try to meet these. Essentially, we have to reduce the temperature of the water coming out of the treatment plant, and then there are some new minerals that they're now going to require us to eliminate from what's being turned out. As I mentioned, that has the potential of a huge, huge cost to us. So we've decided to kind of put this on hold while we continue to work on how to deal with the MPDES permit, because that would affect those beds as well. Anything you want to add to that, Lila?
No, I think you covered it. We just don't want to buy equipment and not have that be the solution.
Spyglass pump station upgrade, $200,000. Lila, why don't you explain? This is one where the estimate of $200,000 has come in much lower than what we anticipated, so why don't you discuss this?
Well, actually, we put that out for design with HBH consultants, and their engineer's estimate came in at $400,000 instead of $200,000. And the cost for them to design the pump station was about $61,000, and we brought that to council, and they're working on that design, but it included a generator, which we didn't include before, and some electrical work. And once the engineers get into it that actually build and remodel pump stations, they came up with quite a few more things that would keep this pump station, if we do the project fully, it'll last for many years. So we usually get a good 20 years out of our pump station upgrades and pump stations, and this was just a very small package pump station. And it has a very long bypass. When we go to bypass, that cost is about $25,000 alone while we put the station in place. It's a manhole so far away. It's all the way to the elementary school.
That will help with what's going on there still, or still
Not
there's
that, the Nell Scott mains will.
Nell Scott.
Yeah.
That smell.
And we do have a design, well, it's the Nell Scott, pump lines, so they all go down High School Drive and to the plant.
But there was like a vent or something that had been cut or something, right, recently, and that was making the smell worse. Wasn't that determined or something?
We've actually put some different
You had
things
smoked
in the
it?
pump station itself, some treatment that we found, and in the manhole.
Yeah.
And so that helps, but that line is so encrusted that it's lost capacity, and those pipes just need to be replaced. And that's one that we're looking at a USDA grant for, and so we have $1 million earmarked, like a matching fund, because it's really a $3 to $4 million project. It's a force main that's a 15-inch force main.
That's probably, what, 6 inches now?
Well, no, the force main I think is fine. It's the lower pressure gravity going down the hill, and we've tried to clean those lines, and it's just calcified on the top of it.
Oh.
Really, the whole pipe is in bad condition. So the study that we're having done, we paid Pace Engineers $250,000 to design this, and they also check the pump station capacity at Nell Scott, and then they size that line, the force main line, and that's where Spyglass line comes into, is that force main along that section. But we've done some things to help remedy the odors at the pump station and at that.
Be like a New York City subway map if we were to look at all the lines.
Yeah, it is.
So Ron, did I hear, Mr. Hoagland, the 200,000 we budgeted and it's going to cost 400,000? Is that
That's
what I heard?
That's correct.
So is there, then where do we get that other 200,000? What project goes away?
We're delaying the 160, right?
Well, at this point of the fiscal year, we're not coming back to ask for.
Oh, okay, so
that,
it's-
so it'll become part of next year's budget.
Gotcha, okay.
Correct.
So on hold?
So on hold. The next project is the screw press installation. I had mentioned to you that we had installed a centrifuge or a screw press. We had budgeted to install a second one to act both to increase our capacity and as a backup, so should something happen to the first one. We budgeted $300,000. This one, unlike the first one, is to be installed inside of an existing building. The first one we built, we had to put in a whole new cement pad plus the building that went around it. This one, we had capacity in one of our existing buildings in order to do that. The bid price came for installation of this at $458,000. So $158,000 over our budget. However, it was interesting to note that it had included $100,000 for engineering, and that caused us to pause and say, why do you need $100,000 to engineer an existing building? And so we decided to take a step back from that. We have very talented engineers on staff, and Lila has assured me that they would be able to, we would be able to create the time for them to work on the engineering, and then we would rebid this after we're able to accomplish that in-house.
So we have purchased the second centrifuge.
We own this, yes.
And that is the same as a screw press.
It is.
So those are interchangeable. And it's for taking the liquid and reducing it more to a solid that can be then taken to the dump, correct? The intention is to run both of them at the same time or not?
We can run both of them, but it's also a backup to our Andritz, the existing one, because mechanical things happen and, control
and
issues.
our ponds are full, so we don't have anywhere to
We have
put it.
nowhere else to take it, but this was also, we were hoping we'd be able to run it to empty those lagoons, but that is going to be it's a many-year process. It's not just going to happen.
Right. Is there, and I can't remember if I asked you guys or not, but would there be a way in which, I don't know, sanitary districts that don't have that ability to use our facility, is that something that could, like we could
In the future.
rent it out to
In the future, that could happen.
You know.
There's more,
than that?
yeah, there's more engineering and more
Can't just, like, load it
mechanical and, dumping area
Sure.
and capacity, making sure that we can handle that.
Right.
But that could be a future
'Cause I
possibility.
know some municipalities don't have that ability, so,
I know Newport's looking at the dryer.
right.
Ron or Lila, which dump are we taking this to?
It goes to Coffin Butte.
Coffin Butte. And I'm just curious, because there has to be a lot of toxins in this. Are we paying, often there is in this sludge, maybe not?
Well, we actually treat it, so.
Okay. So you're getting the regular solid waste price for disposal?
Yes, we used to budget $200,000 every year to take the sludge to the fields, and it was at 6% solids, so it was really a liquid that we were hauling. And now, in the bins that we have, it looks like soil, and it's really pretty dry by the time we're through with it, and it's costing us about the same amount.
How long of a contract do we have with Coffin Butte? Do we have a?
We took a tour, Mr. Chandler and myself and our engineers in wastewater, and they have enough capacity as far as they're concerned for years and years.
Well, they have a capacity, but they, from my clients, I know which are the solid waste owners of the solid waste companies, they have different levels of contracts. And it's important if it's a long-term contract that you've locked in a price. I'm hoping we have a fairly long-term one.
Let me check on that, and I'll find out for sure.
Yeah.
I can't remember exactly what it is, so I don't want to say. But it's, and there are other landfills that you can take it to as well.
All right, I'll check on that, and I'll send you out a note.
What,
But their price can go up, so that's why the dryer is always, the best option, then you don't have to rely on anybody else.
with the summer season coming up, we have this MPDES permit thing going on, and that's largely where a lot of people swim, is that area where it's being, that's the first place people go. And so I have real concerns over what we're not being able to meet. We're not getting our permit, and also one of the highest areas where people swim. So
Our effluent is, I don't want to say cleaner than the lake water, but it's very clean.
I need to point out that we are meeting the standards of the permit that we've been operating under. The changes that we're having are coming from changes to the permit that DEQ is requiring of us. So the biggest one is to reduce the temperature. The other is to looking at 2 minerals. Do you remember?
Copper and zinc.
So those are new to the testing. So we are currently meeting our permit. This is for the renewal of the permit, of which they're adding additional requirements.
Mr. Hoagland.
yes, sir.
Ron, could we go back to that same 160,000? And what I heard you say, we put that on hold because of potential this other, which I applaud. But I'm going back to why we were looking to drain the lagoons to begin with. And as I recall, we wanted a safeguard to utilize those. So we're in essence giving that up.
For the time being,
For the
yes.
time being. So for $160,000, as I recall, this, whatever we do to satisfy DEQ, 160,000 is pale in comparison.
True.
So I'm more right now anyway concerned about, are we really making a decision? What is it saying? Penny wise, pound foolish, or vice versa, or whatever. Because I can't remember why it was important for us to have the lagoons empty.
It was, if we were ever in a position where we needed to turn out the sewage, rather than, there have been times where we have discharged sewage into the creek,
Right.
or into Baldy Creek. In order to avoid those, the idea was that we could use those ponds as temporary storage area. If we had to turn it out, we could turn it out into the ponds rather than in the streams. So that's the potential sacrifice.
So that would play into Mr. Hoagland's concern that it's a different place because the lagoons are. So to me that still weighs heavy.
Right. Clean them out. Couldn't you cool it there, or would?
Well,
But let me go before we get to that. The other thing I thought that was one of the selling points for the screw press, the backup. We were going to,
It
as
is.
brought up, we needed the backup to nice to have long term and make sense, but we were going to do it to really initiate draining, cleaning up these lagoons.
That's true.
So we've already spent $300,000 or whatever what cost for lagoon for the screws. And I'm just wondering again, are we really saving anything versus, 160,000 isn't chump change for sure, but the idea was we'd have a place to put the spills, not spills, but the discharges that we could control and save the PR. And that would be the only thing I'd want us to rethink
Okay.
that a little maybe.
It's a
For
piece of equipment.
Right.
For those who have not been involved in these discussions, there have been times in the past where the distribution system had been overwhelmed by the water that got into it. Often that has been storm water that's gotten into it. And we've had to turn out sewage rather than letting it go to the plant because it was overwhelming the system. That has traditionally gone through down through Baldy Creek. 2 years ago, it's been 2 years ago, all of the sewage was brought to one pipe that then connected into the sewage treatment plant. We installed a second pipe in there to both increase the capacity and act as a backup, a redundant system in case something was damaged in the existing pipe. Interestingly enough, no sooner had, within just a few weeks that we put in that second pipe, that we had damage to the first one. And without that second pipe, we would have discharged, there would have been no way to prevent the discharge into Schooner Creek. So we were fortunate, very fortunate that we got that done. The repairs were made. That was the first line of defense that we talked about. It was not foolproof in that it would completely prevent the possible discharge in it. And so, as Mayor Anderson talked about, that was why we proposed to dredge those ponds. I mean, they could sit there forever, but to dredge those ponds so that we would have a place to turn out the sludge if there was ever need, rather than discharging it into Baldy Creek, which ultimately goes out to the ocean. Okay. Thank you for that. The next project that we wanted to bring up was the sewer line.
Mr. Chandler?
Yes.
Has that pipe been repaired? Do we have a redundant system
do.
again? Okay.
Yeah, it was repaired. The next project is the sewer line replacement of Nelscott Southeast High School Drive Phase 1, which was $250,000. This is a multi-year project, and I'm going to, that involves applying for grants and construction. The total project is estimated to be $4 million, with the city contributing $850,000 towards that. I'm going to let Lila describe this project.
Okay, that's the one we were speaking of earlier from the Nelscott Pump Station, the force main line that would go down High School Drive and essentially to where we connected the new 2 pipes that go under Schooner Creek. So we have a 24-inch, and we have, that was the old pipe, and we slip lined that one after the hole was discovered in it. And then we have 2 14-inch pipes. So we have 3 pipes going across. And so those added capacity, but what we would do is replace all the pipe upstream to Nelscott, and those are the phases. And so the first phase would be in front of the school and taking care of that section. And I believe our consultant is filling out the grant information that was included in the $250,000 for their design. And it's, so we'll just be moving forward with that.
That's not a
And
separate.
we put the $1 million for a matching funds for the grant. But this really fits every aspect of that USDA as far as the Nelscott Pump Station, spilling, and all of those things. And then also during the this large storm that we just had, we had 17 inches of rain in January. Like 3 weeks. And so our crews were out there 24/7 in our pump stations because they're having rag problems. And I don't know what people put in the sewer system, but they have to go in manually and pull all these rags out of the pumps. And so they kept them all running, and we pushed the plant really hard. We do have a large overflow lagoon that we use, and so we did use that during that storm period, and it did not spill anywhere, and it was really difficult.
You said rags, right?
rags.
Like the flushable wipes or what? that
Right,
aren't
which are
flushable?
not biodegradable.
When was the last,
I thought it said rats.
Like cheese wraps.
Well, they look like that. I'll send you some pictures.
you know,
No,
make that a password
And-
protected one so I don't see it. I do have a question. When was our last, like, outreach about, yes, we understand these are things that you could flush, but no, we don't do that? Like,
right. Our outreach has been grease, and then we also show what, you should put in the toilet and what you shouldn't, which is
Right.
really just toilet paper, so.
so when was that? When was the last time we did a
We
nice?
have kind of a continual thing, but we're going to put some articles. I was actually going to talk to Sustainability Committee about it,
Yeah.
because it's become a real problem. It's a
Yeah, I
problem.
mean, it's what's
a
more-
problem in our big SBR basins and our racks, they're getting covered with rags as well.
I think we should add it to the council newsletter that we're doing monthly now.
Absolutely. I mean, at least, like,
Yeah,
remember,
Right.
da-da-da-da-da,
And we're going to have something on our website as well.
yeah.
Not everybody looks at that, but you can
Yeah,
put things
that's-
in with the water billing.
Right, really, because it's costing us, it really has the potential to mess up our system.
Well, it has a potential to make us spill,
Right.
overflow the system.
You love the ocean, stop flushing them. Anyway,
Yep. I mean, our systems clear all of that out, but
Right,
still,
right,
they
right.
have to deal with it.
Over
and
time
It can be a real problem.
good, great job not having a spill so far this year. I mean, that's great.
It's huge. We put some new controls in some of the pump stations, and so they were manually at every one of our large pump stations for that.
Yeah,
for
I mean, that's,
3 days straight, pretty much. and the
that's
plant.
fantastic. I mean, we had two or three last year, so I mean,
Yeah,
Two.
the big one was, of course, Schooner Creek.
yeah, but I mean, that's a great job.
Thanks to our crews out there.
Oh, yeah, and you and your crew, yes.
So we switched places to confuse you a little bit. Actually, I needed Debbie to pull up some information from our computer system. As you look to, do you have any questions about the individual projects? As you look to the sewer operation and capital financial plans, if you turn to attachment 1, page 9, as with the water fund, as with the water operations, it's contained in multiple funds, so is the sewer. There's multiple funds associated with the sewer operation. I wanted to just highlight the effect on the sewer capital financial plan. Debbie, since you've got that, will you tell us where we are and where we're going to be?
Yeah, sorry. I gotta match up my columns and tell them the right column.
That looks right. It's going from 5, the ending fund balance from the proposed. No, it's not proposed here. So it looks like, under the proposed 1920, the ending fund balance is 587,993, based upon the revenues and the expenses that didn't take place. We're estimating that will be $1,132,350. So again, that gives you a higher starting point as we go into next year's budget. The next item that we wanted to address is the Capitals Facility Financial Plan. If you will turn to page 13 of attachment 1. The thing that we really wanted to mention into this one, which is significant as it's projected, We had estimated that there would be $442,000 as the ending fund balance. We're projecting that to be $821,000. And I wanted to give you just a little bit of explanation on a few things that are associated with this. You want to discuss that?
So that's not for 1920. You have over $1 million.
That's what I didn't transfer in from the general fund, we just did, it's in the budget.
442,000.
1819.
Oh, I'm sorry, I was looking at the wrong one. I'm sorry.
Matching up columns, Matt.
Thank you. 1,198,366. We're estimating it to be $821,839. There's some things that are associated with this that we wanted to bring up. Debbie, I'm going to let you explain this, because these are your budget transfers.
Well, part of it is the purchase of the Helping Hands building that we had that was not in, that we amended the budget to do. So that was about 400,000 contributing to the change. We had budgeted 750,000 for the radio project. We're transferring the savings from that we have to the PD construction fund, so that we'll be in that fund for the demolition of the old PD building and the parking lot. Those are the main
Debbie, can you
changes.
talk louder?
Oh, sorry.
Well, she's looking at that. This is actually a good time to bring up some budgetary amendments that the City Council has made and are considering. The first of those is that we had budgeted a little bit, only about $25,000, as part of the PERS, the State Employee Retirement System. The state has had a buy-down program where we had the opportunity to, for whatever we paid on the city's liability, the state would match it by 25%. We decided to take advantage of that, and so the first change that we had in our significant change we had in our budget was the City Council approved $500,000 to buy down our PERS liability. That amount is spread throughout the budget. It's each individual fund has a liability associated with that based on the number of employees and their salaries and so forth. So that one's spread out. The next two items are capital, and they affect this capital facilities fund. In last year's budget, if you recall, we had left an amount in opening capital facilities of $500,000 that could be used for multiple things, but specifically it was identified as a possible use for the City Council to meet one of their goals, which was in the area of what's the word I'm looking for? Transitional housing. Thank you. And an opportunity presented itself to partner with an organization called Helping Hands. So the budget now reflects first the purchase of a piece of property, 3454 Northeast Highway 101, for $400,000, and a loan that would be made to Helping Hands for $350,000, which would be repaid to the city over a number of years. So that was a budget amendment that affected the capital facilities. The second is in the area of economic development and workforce housing. The city is currently working with a developer to develop property off of Northeast 25th Street into workforce housing. Associated with that is the opportunity to buy some property on Highway 101 in front of ours that would allow us to realign a road, improve the entrance to the property to our property, and help facilitate the development of this workforce housing area. We amended the budget to add $500,000 to that, we are currently working with the property owner to determine a price and if we will purchase that property. We are expecting that that will come to the city council either at the end of March or the 1st of April after some more due diligence is done. The fourth item that the council is currently considering that will be before them during their second March meeting is a curbside compost pickup. And at this point, there's nothing in the budget to reflect that. It's not something that we had budgeted. If the council desires to proceed forward with that, it won't affect this budget, but it would affect next year's budget. It would take approximately 1 year to get that up and running. So if the council decides to go forward with a curbside composting pickup, then the next year's budget would reflect that for at least the last quarter. So those are the major significant items that affect this year's budget or would affect the future budget the council has or is considering.
Ron, why does it affect the city, the curbside program?
Because our contract for the pickup is with North Lincoln Sanitary.
Well, I know.
And that's who would do the curbside pickup.
I know, but that usually, and I mean, I set up the program in Newport, and it's usually through the rates, the customer rates.
Yes, there would be two costs associated with, or there would be two budget items associated with this. There would be a revenue increase, but there would also be an expense increase.
Wouldn't North Lincoln bill it? Who would bill it? We do the trash.
I don't think so.
Thank you for helping me catch that.
Yeah, you'll get more revenue, you'll get franchise fees on it, but
Thank you.
okay.
Thank you. I don't know how I missed that. It's almost 7:30.
You probably worked for a city where you did trash.
I did.
Yes.
I did. We were a pass-through in the last city I worked in.
Yeah.
So, sorry, I'm remembering North Ogden. Okay, the next item that we wanted to discuss was Parks and Recreation. So Lila, we'll let you go, and Jeannie, why don't you come up? We have two items that we wanted to discuss.
Chair, can I just ask before you get started on that? So you're looking at 1.25 million in what you're calling workforce housing.
We're looking at,
Have 400 transitional, 350 loan to Helping Hands, and 500 economic development workforce housing.
they're not the, they are not this, you could say it that way, but they're not the same. For workforce housing, which is to facilitate those that are somewhere in the 60 to 120% of the median income, that's the $500,000 property purchase.
Okay. That's what you're calling
The
workforce.
transitional housing, which is more to help those that are currently homeless to get on their feet, to be able to find housing of their own after a time period. That is $750,000.
Okay, and then the other question is on PERS. We put money into PERS last year. That was matched. Do you remember how much we put in?
Well, in the current fiscal year, the 2019-20, we put in 500,000 citywide. And then we did make an application for council's approval, which is not a binding application, but we did make an application to put another 1.5 million in the budget year we'll be working on in a couple months.
And is that buy-down available this next budget year as well?
We were approved for the 1.5 million, yes, and my understanding is there was it all got taken up, the money that was allocated by the state, and so we're hoping that maybe the state will do some more legislation and make more money available in the future since it got used.
Thank you.
That 1.5 isn't a hard number that we have to be at.
No, that is,
It is not binding, no.
it's up to 1.5 million. Okay, in Parks and Recreation, they have lots of capital. We decided to focus on the two big numbers and not all of the small numbers. and that is the development of 2 parks. The first is the Southeast 3rd and Keel Park, and which we had put in $100,000, and or that $100,000 could be used for upgrades to the Taft Park if we were to purchase it, which we have. We've been holding $400,000 for quite some time. That's been at least in the budget ever since I've been here and beyond, just waiting. And let me bring us to the update on the Taft Park first. This year, as in years past, we have both a willing seller, the school district, and a willing buyer, us. But there is some contamination issues that are associated with that property. We have been waiting for a long time to get a no further action notice from the Department of Environmental Quality saying that the contamination is not spreading, it's under control, and we can proceed without having to do any mitigation associated with the property. The latest we have is that we were expecting to have that letter by the end of February,
and they're telling us to wait a couple more weeks. I'm meeting with Dr. Gray, the superintendent, tomorrow morning about a memorandum of understanding for facility usage in our parks and facilities, and I will ask her again tomorrow.
So we're getting the same news, which is it's coming. And it's apparently nothing that either the city nor the school district can force to happen. We still have a willing buyer and a willing seller, just not the ability to move forward.
Excuse me, Mr. Chandler. You said they say another couple weeks. Just to be clear, it's DEQ that's saying another couple weeks.
We're just communicating with the school district, so the superintendent is saying that. They're working with DEQ directly.
So apparently that's what they're being informed
Right.
of
Okay.
by the DEQ.
Okay.
Yeah. We have not had direct contact with DEQ to ask them. It's all
Because
been
we're not
through
the
the school
property owners
district.
yet.
Yeah. The Southeast 3rd, Keel, and Taft Park, so we've looked at that $100,000 and begun to use that to develop that park. And I'm going to allow Jeannie to talk about the actions that have taken place on that.
Okay, we've spent about $79,000 working on development of that park right now. Just an update, we have an open house coming up on March 18th at the community center at 5:30, where we're going to give a clear update on the conceptual plans we have, which will be completed by then. Also let the public know about the timeline of any park projects along with budgets that's needed for that timeline, and to give them the history of the park planning, which I'm going to give to you right now.
It was 5:30?
5:30, community center, yep. We had to do a bit of a process to be able to start putting together a plan for the park, and that included doing a wetland delineation, which was at a cost of $10,000. A topographical survey of the total park needed to be completed, which was at $18,000. We also had a landscape architect work with us, which was around $35,000. We also had a tree survey completed, that's when someone can go in and say, this is a tree you should cut down, this is a tree you should not cut down. And this was to be able to thin the area a little bit out so we could have park amenities put in, as well as to allow that understory to start growing. All the trees that had been put in there in the 70s were the same species, growing at the same rate, so there was no understory growing. We also completed a bit of the tree thinning because we built, with many of your help, the Story Circle play amenity, as well as some trails back in October of 2019. So that part of the park is completed. We're now looking forward with the conceptual plan to put in more trails, more nature play amenities, a dog park, and some overlooks. And there'll be more of an update in March on that.
Congratulations. It's nice.
Chair,
Yes, ma'am.
was this the grant? Is this the Disney
The
grant?
Disney grant was $30K, and that went towards the building of the Story Circle. So that helped with getting a tree contractor in there for some of the thinning. It helped purchase the rock that went in there, all the bark chips that had to be placed in there. And those bark chips were engineered bark chips, so they're ADA bark chips, which means they're more expensive than regular bark chips by quite a bit. So that 30K grant went to fund that, Nancy.
Thank you.
What is the difference between an ADA bark chip and a non-ADA bark chip?
I learned a lot this year. So engineered bark chips are made by a machine that has them all cut at the same, exact same
Size and width.
size, yes. And it's a way that it can compact down further into the surface so that you can have ADA access to it easier than if you were going on the bark chips like what we have at Regatta Park, which we just buy at the landscape supplies.
I would like to point out of a budget change that we will be proposing to the city council, and that has to do with the homeless camp cleanups that we do within our open space. It costs anywhere between $6,000 to $8,000 to clean up one of the camps. We've had 3 of those so far this year at a cost of $17,000. We have 3 more.
Where, I mean, do you have the where?
Yeah, we do, and I can send that to you too if you'd like. The ones that we're going to be working on now and that we have in the past are behind Kurtz's Park, behind the skate park, and down near 51st Street Taft.
Where could people call in? Because when they find those.
To us at the Parks and Recreation Department, to myself.
Or to the police department.
Yes.
Either one.
Yes.
We are anticipating that the cost of those 3 camps will be $20,000 to $24,000, and so we will be bringing forward to the city council to amend the budget so that we can clean up those camps. They are not something that we feel like we should wait until another budget season that we need to act on.
Are we doing those in-house?
No.
Okay, because there's probably some
Biohazards.
Right.
Yes, and so we've looked at how to fund these. We've looked at how much should go into the budget. We budgeted $25,000. Just 2 years ago, we didn't budget anything for them. We budgeted $25,000 this year. I expect that we'll have to budget more for that year. One of the things that you guys did last year was that you devoted 2/3 of the marijuana money to parks, but did not specifically identify where that would be used. We will be proposing that we use those funds to help with the park cleanup, or the homeless camp cleanup.
Chair?
Yes, ma'am.
Is there a way, I mean, it's just going to happen again and again. Is there a way to prevent? Do we, how are we looking for them? Do we have a drone going up? Do we just have
Actually, the
reporting them?
best way to prevent the camps is to get people into the open space, which is to clear out the underbrush and create trail systems, because then you have people moving through. When you look at some of our areas, they are great to hide. If you want to camp and not be seen, we have some really terrific places for that. So I don't know how that will affect the budget in the future.
Wood, but
I don't know how that will affect our budget proposals in the future, but it's a discussion that Jeannie and I have had many a times on, do we have the ability to start creating trail systems, both the creation and the maintenance of them throughout our open space to get people into those.
Is there talk about putting signs like, if you see something like this, please call us, like signs, like please call us if this, like at those locations, simple.
So right now, the signs that we have at those locations, so any of our open spaces and public parking lots, is their closure times and the ordinance that follows that. We don't have a phone number, so I
Yeah,
could look into that. You mentioned that with restrooms before, too.
Absolutely. I think if there's a problem, you call us, because we
Right.
care.
Right.
And it says so on the wall on a plaque that says, if something's not to the standards of what Lincoln City wants to put out there, please call us. And the same with our open spaces, because it matters. Right.
As far as the parks operation financial plan, which is page 14 of attachment 1, it's the projected ending balance is relatively the same. It's off by just a few $1,000s, and so there's not a significant change to that.
the 30,000, the paving at open space, the top dresser athletic fields, and the additional parking at Regatta, were those done in 2016, 17, or is that an error? Yeah, see how it's down? Nobody knows.
I'm not sure which ones you're talking about.
We're by the
Show
word.
me where you're looking.
2019.
Are those supposed to be proposed, like when?
Oh, that was 2016, 17.
It was?
So,
Oh, okay.
I don't even have it on here anymore.
I'll check to be certain.
Yeah, it's just a little different.
I used to, when I first started doing these long-range plans, I used to, I thought it'd be nice to show capital that was done in each year.
Yeah.
But then it kind of got really long.
But then it looks like we
then I
didn't do
kinda
anything in 2017,
Took some of
18.
it off and didn't take others of it off, and it's probably just
An error.
Check on that.
a
too.
Yeah, I mean,
cleanliness issue. Or
sure. Thank you, Debbie.
Explore Lincoln City, there are two projects that we have that I
Thank you,
wanted
Thank you.
to mention on this. The first is developing a tourist attraction in partnership with the Confederated Tribes of Siletz Indians of Oregon. These are for the plazas that are in one or both of the plazas that are up in Ocean Lake.
I like that.
We have had some preliminary discussions with the tribe, but have not really, we haven't kickstarted it enough yet at this point. The other one is the Visitor Center, architectural, structural engineering drawings. This would be associated with the Dee River Wayside Park. We have not begun those because we have not obtained ownership of the Dee River Wayside Park. There's been some turnover at the state in the department where this deals with, and while everything seems to be in place and in order and everybody seems to be willing, again, it's something we haven't been able to move off the dime. And so hopefully we'll be able to have that completed in the next few weeks. Mr. Chair, that concludes our presentation.
All right, anybody else? I'd like to open it up. Nancy? Elaine? Have any other questions? I just would like to go down and everybody.
Not right now.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes.
Quick question. Do we have any idea what the tourist attraction options are at this point, once we get these dialogues started with the tribe? Have you gotten that far?
No, we have that. Well, there's a couple of concepts, but we haven't really discussed them, so I not yet.
So the 125K is just kind of out there to hold until?
It is.
Okay, thank you.
When do we get the actual budget for 1920? We've had the adopted and the proposed. When is the actual?
One that we're currently in,
No,
or for the next year's budget?
for the 1920. Looking.
2021?
We're in 19.
Yeah,
No, you have the actual budget. Is that
we're getting it delivered to us on April 10th.
On a Friday.
okay? That's the actual budget.
Well, that will be the
Proposed.
proposed budget for
Right.
the year that starts in July.
Right, but isn't there a budget that tells you actually what you did spend?
Oh, you're talking about updated financial statements?
Yeah.
I'm going to let you answer that.
Never.
I'll,
Get back to you.
Ron has asked me a few times, more than once, to do some quarterly financial reportings for the city council. So I will get one in this month.
Thank you.
No, no? Sienna? Mr. Mark? Mr. Mark, would you have any questions?
You know, just to that point, I noticed on the column headings,
Do I have my
I think
column?
might be part of the confusion here. So if you, column headings say actual all the way up through 17-18, and then 18-19 says estimated, and wouldn't we know by now that that would be the actual?
We do, however, these worksheets came out of the current budget. We have not provided you with the ones that would show the actual because they also include provisions of next year's budget.
Mr. Mayor?
Just to confirm, we've got, as Judy was indicating, we've got the adopted budget that was after our worksheets got done through Budget Committee. When we see the budget, the projected budget for next fiscal year, it will have all these supplemental budgets that we've been doing, council has been doing, approving, will be in that, what the column that would say estimated.
So I gotta remember my format.
What do you want? The budget?
I'm not thinking. So, the budget book that we'll deliver to you, the proposed budget, will have, the budget for 1920. And that will be inclusive of any changes that have been made since we printed the book.
During the year.
Yes.
That we've been doing.
Yes.
Okay.
It's always the latest budget numbers that we show.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Anything else? Ms. Walke?
No
Mr.
further
Wright?
questions, thank you.
Yes, yes. Mr. Chandler, I wonder if you could provide the committee with city council priorities?
I can, as soon as they're formally adopted.
Okay.
Those will go to the city council on the second meeting of March.
All right. And I'm wondering, is there any way to provide us with evidence, if you will, that the Urban Renewal Agency has been, quote, successful, unquote, over the past, 25 years?
We can. Well, let's do it this way. We can provide you with the information, and you can determine if it's been successful. I think it's been very successful, but that may be a matter of opinion for some. But yes, we can provide you that information.
And I'd like to hear your supporting argument for that position at some point.
Will do.
Thank you.
Ms. Oxenhold has one more question.
Yeah, so budget, we never get a copy of the adopted budget. For budget, we don't get it, so.
We do have it on our website, electronic version, but if you'd like a paper copy, I've got some extras. I'd be happy to, I can go round up a couple after this meeting if you'd like.
Yeah, great. Anything else, anybody? All right, thank you all very much. We're adjourned.
Excuse me. I was thinking that when we were talking.